Let me tell you a truth that may unsettle your mind, but free your heart. You were complete at birth, not partial, not in progress, not in waiting for validation, status, or permission. You arrived here with everything you needed. But somewhere between your first breath and this moment, the world handed you a lie. You are not enough. You must become more. You must seek something out there to be whole. That voice, soft at first, becomes the noise of the crowd, the weight of expectation, the endless scroll of comparison. But this voice is not your own. It was planted to take your power back. You must return to silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of self. You must close your eyes, not to sleep, but to see. To see that beneath the noise, the doubt, the labels, there is something untouched. The child who once stared at the sky without fear, the body that moved without judgment, the mind that did not know shame. This is not some spiritual fantasy. It is a return, like the seasons return, like the tide returns. You too must return to what never left. Look around you. Everything in nature completes itself from within. The tree does not look to the sky and ask for permission to grow. The river does not wait for applause to flow. They simply are, and that is enough. Why not you? But understand this. To reclaim yourself is not to sit idle. It requires discipline, not to punish, to polish. Each breath a sharpening of the blade. Each step a return to the path. Each sunrise a reminder that no one gives you power. You awaken it. When you rise early, not to chase success, but to meet yourself in stillness. When you move your body, not to impress, but to inhabit it. When you speak truth, not to be liked, but to be real. That is how you take your power back. Do not force your way forward. Flow. In martial discipline, we don't clash. We adapt. We do not resist. We redirect. You too must learn to move not from fear, but from alignment. And in that flow you'll find power not of domination, but of presence. And so I leave you with this. Stop looking outward for what has always been inward. Stop trying to become and remember that you already are. You were complete at birth, and today you can take that power back, not with noise, not with ego, but with silence. And a step inward, that's all it takes. Now begin. From the very first moments we open our eyes to this world, something subtle begins to happen, not in our bones or breath, but in the atmosphere around us, in the words spoken, in the glances exchanged, in the structure of how we are taught to be. We begin to receive a message, though no one may say it directly. You are not enough. It is not always loud. In fact, it's often hidden beneath smiles, compliments, and so-called guidance. But the message persists. You must do more have more be more in order to matter. And over time, what was once a child born complete begins to believe that something essential is missing. That is the illusion of incompleteness. This illusion is powerful, not because it's true, but because it has been repeated for so long and by so many that we forget to question it. We are told to chase achievements, to decorate ourselves with titles, to seek approval from institutions and peers alike, in hopes that one day, some distant day, we will finally be enough. But the moment we reach one goal, the bar shifts. The ladder extends, the applause fades, we are left hungry again. That hunger is not because we are lacking, but because we are feeding the wrong part of ourselves. No tree wonders if it's tall enough. No mountain compares its height to the one beside it, and yet the human being, equipped with awareness, creativity, and breath, walks through life with the weight of inadequacy pressing into its spine. This weight is not natural, it is learned. From early schooling, we're given grades, ranks, and labels, gifted, average, behind, and so we internalize the idea that our worth depends on performance. As we grow, media bombards us with perfected images, carefully curated lives, filtered faces, the silent message, you are not beautiful enough, not successful enough, not smart enough, unless you match this version we created. But who created it, and why do we believe it? Even in relationships, we often play roles rather than reveal truth. We try to be what we think others want us to be, wearing layers of behavior and identity that are shaped more by survival than authenticity. It is no surprise that we wake up one day feeling like strangers to our own soul, wondering where our real self has gone. The illusion of incompleteness has nothing to do with your essence. It is a fog that clouds the mirror. You do not need to add anything to yourself in order to be whole. You simply need to wipe the mirror clean. Beneath the dust of doubt and comparison lies something untouchable, your true nature. That nature was there before anyone told you who or what you should be. The mind, when untamed, becomes a collector of opinions. It remembers every criticism, stores every judgment, and replays them on loop. But the heart, quiet, ancient, and stilled, does not measure worth in external terms. It knows only presence, and when you are fully present, not trying to fix or impress, but simply being asterisk, you can begin to feel that completeness again, not as an idea, as a reality. This is not about avoiding growth. Growth is part of life, but growth should not come from lack. It should come from abundance. A tree does not stretch toward the sun because it feels incomplete. It grows because it is alive. In the same way, we are meant to express our fullness, not chase wholeness like a ghost. The idea that something is wrong with you is often a strategy, used by industries, systems, even well-meaning individuals, to control, sell, and guide behavior. A person who feels whole is not easily manipulated. A person who knows their own worth cannot be controlled through fear or shame. So it benefits many if you continue to believe you are broken, but you're not. In quiet moments, when the world stops shouting at you, there's a voice that whispers from deep within. It does not scream, it does not beg for attention. It simply is asterisk. That voice carries memory, not of trauma or teaching, but of original self, the part of you that danced before it was told what rhythm to follow. The part that created without comparison, the part that knew how to rest without guilt. That self is not gone. It is simply buried under the noise. You don't need to find something outside yourself. You need to remember what was already inside. Wholeness is not a destination. It's your default state. The illusion has only ever been that you are somehow lacking, but the reality is you are enough. Not because you achieved anything, not because someone said so, but because you exist. And existence, in its purest form, is already complete. Every day, from the moment we rise, we are met with noise. Not only the literal noise of alarms, traffic, conversations, and notifications, but a deeper, more persistent kind. The kind that hums beneath the surface of modern life. Expectations, opinions, comparisons, constant access to everyone else's stories and successes. This noise forms an invisible current we swim in, often without realizing how far it carries us away from ourselves. There is a cost to this noise, a slow but steady erosion of clarity. We begin to hear everything except the one voice that matters, our own. Not the voice shaped by ego or habit, but the quiet, grounded one that lives beneath all temporary thoughts. That voice speaks not in arguments or demands, but in presence, in knowing. It is the voice of internal silence, and we have forgotten how to listen to it. The world trains us to look outward. We are taught to respond quickly, react instantly, stay connected constantly. Slowness is mistaken for weakness. Stillness is labeled unproductive, but in truth, stillness is not the absence of action. It is the foundation of right action. Without stillness, we do not respond, we merely react. And reactions born from noise only create more of it. Most people carry a restless mind like a second skin, a mind that jumps from one thought to the next without pause, a mind that absorbs every voice, every image, every piece of news, and tries to make sense of it all while simultaneously forgetting to make sense of itself. In this way, distraction becomes not just a habit, but a way of life. And distraction, over time, becomes disconnection. Disconnection from who you are, disconnection from what you truly value, disconnection from the present moment. To reclaim ourselves, we must begin to understand the true nature of silence, not as something empty, but as something full. Full of awareness, insight, clarity. When you turn down the volume of the world, you begin to hear what has always been there, your breath, your heartbeat, your thoughts without the interference of opinion, your feelings without the fog of interpretation. External noise can come in many forms. It's not just sound, it's stimulation. Endless scrolling, constant messaging, overscheduling, multitasking, and consuming content not out of need but out of habit. Each one might seem harmless in isolation, but together they create a rhythm of distraction so continuous that you begin to forget what it feels like to be undisturbed. When you are constantly pulled outward, it becomes almost impossible to look inward. And without looking inward, self-knowledge fades. How can you know what you truly desire when every moment is filled with someone else's version of success? How can you understand your mind if it's never given the chance to rest, to observe itself, to breathe? The mind, when agitated, behaves like muddy water. Shake it enough and everything becomes unclear, but leave it alone, let it settle, and slowly the water clears. You can see the bottom, you can see what's always been there. This is what silence allows. It is not a retreat from the world. It is a return to reality. There are many ways to cultivate internal silence, and none of them require dramatic change. They require intention. You can begin by simply creating spaces in your day that are free from input. Walk without your phone. Eat without distraction. Sit without needing to do. In these moments, your mind may resist. It will reach for noise like a hand reaching for a familiar tool. But if you can resist that pull, something remarkable happens. The background chatter begins to fade, and behind it, a deeper layer of mind begins to emerge, not the surface thoughts, but the space in which thoughts arise. That space is not reactive, it is not insecure, it is not afraid of stillness, it is peace itself. From this place, decisions become simpler, emotions become clearer. You don't get rid of your thoughts. You simply stop identifying with all of them. And when thoughts lose their grip, clarity enters. You begin to realize how often you were caught in loops created by external noise, trying to solve problems that were never yours, chasing goals that didn't matter, comparing yourself to standards that have nothing to do with your path. Silence returns you to alignment. It doesn't ask you to withdraw forever. It asks you to reconnect so that when you step into the world again, you do so with intention. You speak from depth, not impulse. You act from clarity, not confusion. You carry presence instead of distraction. External noise will always exist. The world will not get quieter for your peace. You must become the one who decides what enters and what stays. The mind is a gate. You are the gatekeeper, and the more you practice this role, the more naturally stillness arises, not just in meditation or quiet moments, but in the middle of chaos. That is the real power of internal silence. It does not depend on the absence of noise. It is the ability to remain undisturbed within it. The mirror is a surface, a reflection of light, an illusion shaped by the outer shell. When we stand before it, we think we see ourselves. But what we are actually witnessing is a version, a snapshot frozen in time, influenced by lighting, by mood, by memory, and by belief. Yet we take this image and call it truth. We judge it, praise it, hate it, fix it, decorate it, sometimes even worship it. But the truth is, what we see in the mirror is not who we are. The mirror cannot show us our essence, it can only show our form. And while form changes, aging, shifting, evolving, essence does not. The part of you that loves without reason, that feels joy without condition, that senses truth without evidence, that cannot be seen by the eye. It can only be known by experience, and yet we often forget this. We begin to believe the mirror, We begin to confuse appearance with identity. From a young age, we are taught to associate our worth with how we look. Compliments are often rooted in the physical. You're so cute. You look strong. You've lost weight. What a beautiful smile. Slowly, unconsciously, we tie our value to what is visible, and so we learn to perform for the mirror. We sculpt ourselves to fit what we believe is acceptable, attractive, or impressive, but in the process we lose something sacred, the connection to the invisible. The invisible self is not concerned with shape or size. It does not ask whether you are liked or approved of. It does not shrink in the face of judgment or glow with temporary praise. It simply is unchanging, steady, rooted. This self is always there, even when we cannot see it. It waits patiently behind the mask, behind the makeup, behind the expression we put on for others. It waits in silence, unaffected by the noise of opinion. This is not to say the body does not matter. The body is the vessel, the bridge between the internal and external world. It deserves respect and care, but it is not the final word on who you are. Your body may speak your story, but it is not the author. Your face may carry signs of your experiences, but it is not the experience itself. And yet, when we look in the mirror, we often stop at the surface. We do not ask, who is the one looking? When you stare into your own eyes, do you see beyond the skin? Do you see the child who once looked at the world with wonder? Do you feel the breath that has never stopped since the moment you were born? That breath is closer to your truth than any image ever could be. In many traditions, the practice of self-inquiry begins with detachment from appearances. Not to reject the body, but to realize you are not confined by it. You are the awareness that watches, the space between thoughts, the presence that lingers after the emotions pass. This realization is not poetic. It is deeply practical, because when you stop identifying with the mirror, you become free. Free from needing to fit a mold, free from obsessing over imperfections, free from the loop of comparing and competing, and most importantly, free to be as you are. The mirror only reflects the outside. It cannot reflect your compassion. It cannot show your resilience, your kindness, your courage to continue when no one sees your struggle. It cannot measure your depth, and yet the world will often ask you to define yourself by what the mirror shows. It will ask you to put effort into looking right, even if you feel wrong. It will reward the appearance of confidence more than the reality of inner peace. But here's the truth. No one has ever seen the real you with their eyes. They have only seen the mask, the posture, the habits, the roles. The real you exists beneath all of it, and to know this is to return to something ancient, something unshakable. The real you cannot be aged. It cannot be criticized. It cannot be improved, because it was never broken. This is why practices like meditation, silence, and solitude are so important. They strip away the noise. They remove the mirror. They leave you with what is essential, and what is essential cannot be defined by lines on the face or numbers on a scale. It can only be felt. If you rely only on the mirror to tell you who you are, you will always be uncertain. Because mirrors change, they distort, they reflect back not just your face, but your state. Tired eyes look older, a heavy heart sinks the posture. A joyful spirit lights the whole face, and so the mirror becomes a shifting story, not a stable reality. When you stop looking outward for confirmation and start looking inward for connection, a new kind of truth arises, one that doesn't flicker with age or fade with fashion, one that cannot be validated or invalidated by anyone else. That is the truth of your essence. That is the truth the mirror cannot show. Discipline is often misunderstood. To many it sounds like restriction, control, sacrifice, something heavy and forced. But true discipline is not a punishment. It is a pathway. It is the bridge between who we think we are and who we truly are underneath the noise, the habits, and the layers we've gathered over time. It is not about becoming someone different. It is about remembering who we've always been. Within each of us lives a deeper self, a quiet self, not the one that reacts to every emotion, not the one that seeks approval or avoids discomfort, but the one that watches, waits, and understands. That self is not lost. It is simply dormant, covered, forgotten, and discipline is the gentle, consistent act of waking it up. The world around us encourages chaos, quick fixes, instant gratification, and scattered attention. The rhythm of modern life pulls us in every direction, leaving us fragmented, overwhelmed, and disconnected. In that space, we often say we feel off or lost. What we are really feeling is the absence of alignment. And alignment comes only through intention. Intention needs form. Form needs practice. Practice is discipline, daily rituals. No matter how small, become anchors. A simple breath taken with awareness in the morning. A stretch that reconnects body and mind. A few minutes of stillness before the rush begins. These are not grand gestures, but they are powerful because they remind us that we are not merely reacting to life. We are participating in it consciously. Movement is more than exercise, it is a language. The body speaks through movement, and when we move with presence, we awaken that language again. We become grounded, not just physically, but mentally. Each step, each motion, becomes a form of remembering. The muscles remember their strength, the breath remembers its rhythm, the mind remembers its center. Breath is not just survival, it is a rhythm that connects the inner and outer worlds. Inhale and you invite life in, exhale and you let go. Most of us breathe shallowly, unconsciously, but when we bring attention to the breath, something subtle shifts. We slow down, we come back into the moment. We remember that presence is not something we find, it is something we return to. Silence, too, is a discipline, not just the absence of noise, but the presence of space, space to observe, space to listen, space to be. In silence, we are no longer performing, we are no longer entertaining thoughts out of habit. We sit with ourselves as we are, and we watch. At first, this can be uncomfortable, the mind resists. But over time, the noise begins to settle. Beneath it, clarity arises, not from effort, but from simplicity. These practices are not new. They are ancient, tested, and universal. What is new is our need to return to them with urgency. Because in a world designed to distract and divide, discipline becomes not just personal. It becomes sacred, a silent act of rebellion, a way to reclaim ownership over our attention, our energy, our essence. Discipline is not about harshness. It is not about bending yourself into some rigid version of perfection. It is about commitment, and that commitment is not to results. It is to the process, the act of showing up again and again, even when motivation fades, even when progress is slow. Because each time you show up, you are telling your deeper self, I am here, I have not forgotten you. The dormant self does not wake with noise, it does not emerge through force, it reveals itself through consistency, through the quiet repetition of acts that honor truth. Over time, discipline becomes devotion. What began as effort becomes natural, and in that space you begin to notice something subtle yet profound. You are not changing. You are returning. There is a version of you that is calm, clear, strong, and unshakable. Not because of anything you achieve, but because that self was always there. Discipline does not create this version. It removes what covers it. It peels away distraction, laziness, doubt, and fear, not through judgment, but through action. This is the difference between discipline driven by ego and discipline rooted in essence. Ego-driven discipline is about image, doing something to prove, to outperform, to be seen. But essence-driven discipline is quiet. It does not need applause. It is content with the act itself. It is the ritual, not the result, that matters. Through these rituals, we begin to rebuild the connection with our center. A connection that does not need words or goals, just presence, just the willingness to meet ourselves in movement, in breath, in silence. And the more we do this, the more natural it becomes to live from that place, not just during practice, but in everyday life. In the face of chaos, we remain steady. In the face of fear, we remain open. In the face of uncertainty, we remember, because we have trained, because we have shown up, because we chose to return to ourselves again and again, not by accident, but through discipline. And that is how the dormant self begins to awaken, not as something new, but as something ancient we are finally ready to carry with awareness. Blame is a tempting place to rest. When life feels heavy, when events unfold beyond our control, when we suffer loss or face hardship, it is natural to look outward. We point to others, the system, the past, the people who hurt us, the circumstances that held us back. And for a moment, blaming feels like relief. It allows us to escape the weight of ownership. But what blame gives in comfort, it takes away in power. There is a subtle but vital difference between fault and responsibility. Fault is backward looking. It asks who caused this. Responsibility is forward facing. It asks what can I do now? When we confuse the two, we give away our agency. We wait for others to change before we begin to heal. We hold our breath, hoping the world becomes fair, kind, or reasonable before we allow ourselves to step forward. But life does not wait, and neither should we. Reclaiming responsibility is not about pretending everything is our doing. It is not about denying pain or dismissing the real injustices we face. It is about reclaiming the only thing we can truly control, how we respond. The moment we stop looking outward for permission to change, we begin to access a deeper kind of strength. Not the strength to dominate or avoid, but the strength to meet life as it is with clarity and intention. Clarity arises when we stop reacting blindly. It emerges when we pause, breathe, and ask the harder question. Not why did this happen to me, but what is this moment asking of me? Every challenge carries within it the seed of growth. But that seed can only take root if we are willing to respond from awareness rather than from habit. Most of us live inside stories we've inherited, accepted, or repeated so often that they become invisible frameworks. Stories like I never get a break, or people always let me down, or nothing I do matters. These stories are built on past experiences, but they are kept alive by our current choices. The moment we stop feeding them, by acting differently, thinking freshly, or choosing not to repeat the same response, we begin to dissolve them. Responsibility means stepping outside of the story, even if it has been with us for years. It means observing the pattern and then breaking it, not with aggression but with awareness. It means no longer saying, that's just how I am, and instead asking, who am I becoming? This shift may seem small, but it transforms everything. Because it moves us from victimhood to authorship. Life will not always be fair. That is a truth we must face directly, but unfairness does not have to define us. Every time we choose to meet unfairness with courage rather than complaint, we reclaim power. Every time we take action instead of waiting for rescue, we grow in capacity. And every time we take responsibility not just for what we do, but for how we show up, we deepen our freedom. Freedom is not found in doing whatever we want. It is found in choosing how we meet what we did not choose. This is the essence of responsibility. Not control, but response, and a conscious response is far more powerful than the strongest reaction. To live this way requires practice. It requires presence. When we are caught in blame, our energy scatters. We become reactive, emotional, driven by past wounds and imagined futures. But when we center ourselves in response, energy returns. We become steady. Our actions begin to align with our values, not our moods, and when that happens, even difficulty becomes meaningful. Responsibility is a form of remembering that we are not helpless even when we feel hurt. Remembering that we are capable even when we feel confused. remembering that our choices, small and large, shape the world we live in both inside and out. When we live from this place, we no longer seek power. We recognize that we already have it, the power to forgive, the power to let go, the power to try again, the power to shift a moment through a single breath, a single decision. Blame holds us hostage. Responsibility sets us free, but that freedom comes with weight. It asks us to grow. It demands honesty. It requires that we stop hiding behind excuses and face ourselves fully. And in doing so, we reclaim not only power, but dignity. Because there is great dignity in standing up, in owning your part, in choosing the harder path not because you must, but because it aligns with your truth. To respond with clarity is to live deliberately, to act not out of reaction but out of reflection, and to do so consistently is to walk a different kind of path, not always easy but always empowered. In this way, life becomes less about what happens to us and more about what we do with what happens. This is the quiet revolution of responsibility, not loud, not dramatic, but deep, steady, and transformational. A return to the self that never needed saving, only remembering. Force is the way of the untrained mind. It is the path we often take when we feel disconnected from the natural rhythm of life. When we force, we try to bend life to our will, to control every outcome, to prove our worth through effort. But effort without wisdom becomes tension. Action without alignment becomes exhaustion, and in time, even the strongest hands tire when they grip too tightly. Nature, in contrast, never hurries. The river does not rush, yet it carves through rock. The seasons shift without struggle, yet all things are renewed. The tree does not chase the sun, yet it always grows toward it. There is a deep intelligence in this unforced unfolding, a silent discipline that is effortless in its persistence. Nature teaches us that real power is not in pushing harder, but in learning how to move with the current instead of against it. In life, we often confuse movement with progress. We fill our days with tasks, goals, accomplishments, racing from one moment to the next, afraid of slowing down, afraid of falling behind. But speed is not the same as depth, and noise is not the same as purpose. When we live in force, we are always slightly ahead of ourselves, chasing outcomes, measuring worth, proving something. We lose the present moment, and with it we lose the joy of simply being. Flow is different. Flow is the state where action arises naturally, without strain. It is when body, mind, and intention move as one, where thought does not obstruct movement, and the ego does not distort effort. In flow, there is no resistance. Not because challenges disappear, but because we are no longer at war with what is. We act not out of anxiety, but out of clarity, not to prove, but to express, not to conquer, but to participate. To return to flow, we must begin by listening, not to the noise of the world, but to the quieter rhythm within. The body knows when it is being forced. The breath shortens, the shoulders tighten, the mind becomes restless. These are signals, not of weakness, but of misalignment. When we ignore them, we lose our way. But when we pay attention, we begin to remember how to move from presence, not pressure. Effort without strain is not laziness, it is mastery. It is the art of doing just enough, not too much, not too little. It is the precision of the archer who knows that tension alone will not release the arrow true. It is the wisdom of the martial artist who understands that the soft overcomes the hard. In this way, flow is not passive, it is responsive. It requires awareness, it requires trust, trust in timing, trust in process, trust in the quiet unfolding of things. When we act from ego, we seek to control, we attach our value to the result. We try to force success, love, growth, believing that if we just do more, we will become more. But the ego does not understand rhythm. It knows only grasping, and what is grasped too tightly often slips away. Flow invites a different kind of strength, a quieter kind. It teaches us that sometimes the most powerful action is no action. Sometimes the greatest force is stillness. Sometimes not knowing what to do is the doorway to a deeper knowing. This is not surrender in the sense of giving up. It is surrender in the sense of giving in to something deeper, something wider than the mind can comprehend. When we return to this kind of movement guided by inner alignment rather than outer pressure, we find that life begins to cooperate, doors open, energy returns, challenges remain, but they feel different. Less like walls, more like rivers to cross. We begin to sense the right moment to act, the right moment to wait. And when we act, we do so with our whole being, not from tension but from integration. This is how flow works, not through constant effort, but through consistent presence. And presence can only arise when we are not pushing against life, but moving with it. The breath becomes the guide. The body becomes the instrument. The mind becomes quiet enough to listen, instead of always needing to speak. In this state, action arises from clarity, not compulsion, and that clarity brings with it a different kind of discipline. Not the discipline of willpower, but the discipline of harmony, a way of being that honors both movement and stillness, that understands there is a time to plant and a time to wait, a time to strive and a time to release, a time to lead and a time to follow. When we practice this, we stop trying to push the river. We learn to float with it, to paddle when needed, to rest when called. And in doing so, we find that everything that truly matters begins to unfold, not through force, but through presence. Not through resistance, but through rhythm. Not through striving, but through remembering how to be a part of life's dance, not just an observer or controller of it. Flow is not the absence of effort, it is effort refined. It is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the return to what we already know deep down, that life moves best not when it is forced, but when it is felt. We spend much of our lives walking outward, seeking answers in the world around us, looking for direction in the voices of others, measuring our worth against distant ideals. We chase success, love, belonging, and meaning as though they live somewhere outside of us, waiting to be found, earned, or given. But in the quiet spaces between our striving, a deeper truth waits patiently. The way home has never been out there. The way home is inward. No map can guide this journey, because the terrain is not external. It is the landscape of your own being, familiar yet forgotten, close yet often obscured by distraction. It is not marked by signposts or milestones, but by moments of presence, by glimpses of stillness, by sudden clarity that arrives not from thought, but from silence. This is the path we all must walk, not to become someone new, but to return to who we have always been. From the moment we are born, the world begins to shape us. Expectations, labels, comparisons, all are layered over the quiet truth of our essence. Slowly, we begin to believe we are only what we do, what we achieve, or how we are perceived. We build identities to navigate the world, and while useful, they are not the full picture. Behind the roles and stories lives something more permanent, more honest, the self that watches, feels, breathes, and simply asterisk is asterisk. To begin the journey inward is to stop running from that self. It is to pause long enough to feel what has been ignored, to listen to what has been silenced, to meet yourself without judgment. This is not always easy. Often, what we find at first is not peace, but discomfort. The noise we've been avoiding, the wounds we've buried, the fear that has kept us moving just fast enough to avoid stillness. But if we stay, if we breathe, if we soften instead of resist, something begins to shift. The noise quiets, the wounds begin to heal, and beneath the fear we begin to sense the presence we thought we had lost. That presence is not something to reach for, it is already here. It does not need to be created, only uncovered. Like the sky hidden by clouds, your true self is always present, vast, calm, clear. The more we return inward, the more we remember this, and the more we remember, the less dependent we become on external conditions for our peace, our direction, our worth. We begin to realize that the answers we seek are not out there. The clarity we long for is not in someone else's advice, not in the next achievement, not even in spiritual ideas. It is in the quiet knowing that arises when we are fully with ourselves. When we sit in silence, when we move in presence, when we breathe not to get somewhere but to return, the inward path is not linear. There is no checklist, no final destination. Some days we feel close to ourselves. Other days we feel lost again. This is not failure. This is the rhythm of being human. Even in the moments of confusion or discomfort, the path is still unfolding. Each breath taken with awareness is a step. Each act of compassion toward yourself is progress. Each moment of stillness is a return. To walk inward is not to reject the world, but to reorient your relationship with it. You no longer look to it to complete you, but to reflect you. The world becomes a mirror, not a master. People become fellow travelers, not judges. Challenges become teachers, not punishments. And your worth is no longer negotiable, because it is rooted in something deeper than achievement. It is rooted in being. This is not a journey of escape, but of return. You are not trying to leave your life behind. You are trying to live it more fully, more honestly, more aligned with who you really are. That alignment begins with attention. It deepens through presence, and it is sustained by a commitment to keep coming back. Even when you forget, even when you wander, even when the path disappears under your feet, the truth is you are the path. You are the traveler, you are the destination. The longing you feel is not a call to go somewhere else. It is a call to come home, not to a place, but to a way of being, not to an identity, but to an essence. Not to something new, but to something ancient and intimate and real. Every moment offers the doorway back. Every breath can be the beginning. Every pause, a homecoming. The external world may keep changing. Circumstances may rise and fall, but the path inward is always available. It does not close. It does not disappear. It simply waits, without demand, without pressure, without judgment. It waits for you to remember. To turn inward is not to isolate. It is to integrate. It is to move through the world not from fear, but from centeredness, not chasing peace, but carrying it, not proving your worth, but embodying it. And the more you walk this path, the more natural it becomes. What once felt like effort becomes ease. What once felt distant becomes familiar. What once felt fragmented becomes whole. This is how the journey continues. Not with force, not with rush, but with presence. A steady return to the still point within. A quiet commitment to remember what was never truly forgotten. And in that remembering you begin to live, not as someone searching for home, but as someone who has realized the way home has always been inside. You were never missing, not at birth, not now. The silence you seek, the strength you admire, the clarity you chase, all of it lives within you, waiting not to be earned, but remembered. Every illusion of lack was taught, not truth. Every story of insufficiency was inherited, not innate. This entire journey, through stillness, through struggle, through the shedding of force and the return to flow, has not been about becoming something new. It has been about removing what was never yours to carry. The world will keep shouting. It will try to convince you that who you are is not enough, that you must do more, prove more, become more. But now you know differently. You were complete at birth. Nothing was missing. The path was already within you, as was the traveler and the destination. You don't need fixing. You need remembering, and the way back, it is simple, though not always easy. Return to your breath. Move with presence. Listen before acting. Take responsibility, not blame. Flow, don't force. Go inward, not outward. This is not philosophy. It is practice, a daily return. 1,000 small homecomings. Take that power back, not from the world, but from the illusion that you ever gave it away. Stand now, not as someone waiting for permission to begin, but as someone who has already arrived.